Hello all and welcome to the afternoon session on day 2 of the 2021 Virginia Highway Safety Summit. I am going to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get started this afternoon. Please remain muted for the duration of the session. We want to avoid background noises that could potentially interrupt our speakers. Secondly, please place all questions in the chat box. Our moderator will be monitoring the chat box and we will conduct a question and answer at the end of the session. Lastly, you have free control of your viewing mode. You can change the viewing mode at the top of your screen. It defaults to view everyone. We recommend changing that viewing mode to view who's talking so you are focused on the speaker. As a final quick note, we will be recording the sessions and will be sending out the presentation once the summit is over. With that, I will now turn it over to the moderator for this afternoon's session, Mr. Bill Naff. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie, and good afternoon, everyone. As she said, my name is Bill Naff, and I will be the moderator of this session. I'm a program manager at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Region 3 office in Baltimore. I'm also the regional program manager for the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Highway Safety Program. Today, we're going to be talking about changing risky driving behavior in this session, and we have several great speakers that I'll be introducing here shortly. Don't forget that the presentations will be available, and any questions, please put in the chat box. We'll be answering them at the end of the sessions. First, we will have Mr. Keith Williams from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Keith is a chief of the Enforcement Justice Services Division at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in DC. His division provides national leadership in planning and developing improved driver education, licensing, enforcement, prosecution, judicial, and post-adjudication efforts. Mr. Williams began his career with the U.S. Department of Transportation in 2004, where he has worked in the Enforcement Justice Services Division before he took a position in the Federal Highway Administration in their Office of Safety in 2009. Mr. Williams led a number of programs and initiatives with the U.S. DOT's Intelligent Transportation System, Joint Programs Office on Connected and Autonomous Vehicles, Office of Operations, Traffic Incident Management Initiatives. Secondly, we have up would be Mr. Michael Sawyer. Michael Sawyer is from the city of Richmond, Virginia, and a city transportation engineer. Michael Sawyer has over 30 years of experience in transportation engineering work in the private sector, as well as local, state, regional, tribal, and federal levels of government. He currently serves as the city transportation engineer for the city of Richmond, Virginia, and he is designated as the city's Vision Zero coordinator. Previously, he served as the state highway safety engineer in the Virginia Department of Transportation. He emphasizes that transportation should serve all users within the city, and in particular serve transportation disadvantaged communities who are disabled, elderly, or low income. Thirdly, we will have Andrea Garland. She is also a traffic engineer with the city of Roanoke, Virginia. Her transportation professional is a self-motivated traffic engineer with a strong desire to support communities in becoming more active, healthy, safe, friendly, and inclusive of all modes of transportation. And finally, we'll have Patrick Hoye. Patrick is with the Bureau of Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau in Iowa. Patrick is a retired 32-year veteran of the Iowa State Police. During his tenure with the State Patrol, he held numerous field and administrative positions. In 2007, he was selected to serve as the patrol's 13th chief. In 2008, while colonel in the Iowa State Patrol, he was recognized by IACP during their national challenge as the top state patrol in the nation for its size. On November 1st, 2012, Patrick was appointed Bureau Chief of the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau, where he serves today. As Bureau Chief, Patrick has a staff in the Governor's Traffic Safety Bureau and set an aggressive agenda to continue to reduce fatalities and serious injuries in Iowa. Programs such as High Five Traffic Safety Project and the I-80 Challenge have been effective in reducing crashes on Iowa's roadways. So what I'm going to do now is introduce each session, and our first presenter will be Mr. Keith Williams. He will be discussing the issue of speed and speeding on our roadways and how it is contributing to fatal and serious injury increases. The focus on speed is a national one, and countermeasures to affect change are being utilized in a variety of ways. He will tell you what is being done around the country and how Virginia can effectively address the speeding issue. Keith, the presentation is yours.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. I have to figure out how to put this in presentation mode. The thing I usually use is not here.
Keith, if you go up to view at the top, view over to the right.
There you go. Thank you. That's not the one I usually use. And turn it on. Slide sort of outline view, or I just can't seem to find it.
Or you can go. There.
I got it. Okay,
There you
very
go.
good. Thank you. So thank you and for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here at the Virginia Highway Safety Summit. I know some great information has been shared amongst you today. So from a national perspective, we've historically made great strides in improving roadway safety. And as recently as 2019, there were 36,096 motor vehicle traffic fatalities on the United States roadways, which was about 740 fewer than the almost 37,000 fatalities in 2018, and marked the third consecutive year in which traffic fatalities declined after reaching a high of 37,806 in 2016. And remarkably, the fatality rate by VMT has dropped from a historic 3.35 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled in 1975 to 1.10 in 2019. And that's despite huge and massive increases in road user numbers. And then COVID hit. So the COVID pandemic resulted in some concerning behavioral driving issues. And NHTSA has released a number of reports to document and analyze various data about the pandemic and the associated risky driving behaviors. And I've included a photo there, or a clip of the fourth quarter report that was just published recently. And during the early months of the national public health emergency, driving patterns and behaviors changed significantly, specifically related to the stay-at-home orders. And of the drivers who remained on the roads, some engaged in some very risky driving behaviors, including speeding, failure to wear seatbelts, and driving under the influence of alcohol and other drugs. And traffic data indicated average speeds increased during the second quarter of 2020, and extreme speeds became more common. Across roadway functional classifications, the speeds observed in 2020 remained higher than those observed in 2019. And in all cases, the 2020 speeds were higher than 2019 speeds in urban settings where most of the people live and drive, except for the 99th percentile speeds on urban interstates. A recent report also showed a median 22% increase in speeds in selected metropolitan areas. Other data suggested that fewer people involved in crashes used their seatbelts. NHTSA, which is national EMS data, showed that the numbers of ejections in fatal crashes increased during the pandemic, indicating reduced seatbelt use. And the study of seriously or fatally injured road users at 5 participating trauma centers found that between mid-March and mid-July, almost 2/3 of drivers tested positive for at least one active drug, including alcohol, marijuana, and/or opioids. And the proportion of such drivers testing positive for opioids nearly doubled after mid-March 2020 as compared to the previous 6 months. And marijuana prevalence increased by about 50%. And we also found nationally that alcohol and marijuana sales increased significantly during the pandemic. So NHTSA's data center estimated that the fatality rate for 100 million VMT rose from a low of 1.06 in 2019 to a projected rate of 1.25 in 2020. That was not good news. And in that report, NHTSA also reported the 16.6% reduction in the VMT, or people using the roads, during the first 6 months of 2020. And we'll need to see what happens as VMT returns to normal. So during the height of the pandemic, speeds were up, alcohol and drug use was up, data indicates seatbelt use was down. And although there had been a significant decrease in VMT, the fatality rate significantly increased. And we're receiving some data now that indicates these behaviors may not be returning to pre-pandemic conditions, but we don't know for sure yet, and we'll have to see. So this slide shows graphically the month-by-month changes in VFT and the number of fatalities during the pandemic. Blue is 2019, yellow bar is 2020. And the stay-at-home orders started in March, so you can see the precipitous drop in VMT then. But the graphic shows that as fatalities decreased through those first several months, they increased June to September of 2020, despite that continued decrease in VMT. And at the end of 2020, FAR's early estimates data paints a fairly dim picture for the year. The early estimates breaks out crash types even further than the risky driving studies. And the estimate shows that 14 crash type categories increased during the year of the pandemic, some of them fairly significantly. So in terms of speeding, speeding, and more holistically, speed management are certainly very highly complex issues that involve, and to name a few, public attitudes, road user behavior, vehicle performance, roadway design and characteristics, posted speed limits, communications, and law enforcement strategies. People construct roads, people set the speed limits on those roads, people use the roads, and more importantly here, people select the speed at which they travel. And when they select that speed, they don't always, and in fact, they rarely travel at the posted speed limit. It's fairly difficult to travel a road segment at an exact speed at the speed limit. So nationally, we encourage an interdisciplinary approach that includes engineering, enforcement, education, and EMS to reduce speeding-related crashes and the associated fatalities, injuries, and damage associated with them. Speed management naturally involves a number of issues and questions, including how to define the relationship between speed, speeding, and safety, how to apply road design and engineering measures so that drivers select the appropriate speed, how to set speed limits that are safe and reasonable. When speed limits conflict with driver behavior, there's a real problem. It's important to balance the safety and mobility, which is quite complex, and how to apply enforcement efforts and appropriate technology that effectively target crash-producing speeders and deter speeding. I point out that high numbers of speeding-related crashes at spot locations is rarely answered by HVE or law enforcement interventions alone. There's normally something amiss in the infrastructure if crashes are continually happening at a single location. And how to effectively market and communicate educational messages that focus on risk drivers and support an HVE campaign. And this involves the cooperation, support, and leadership in the community. Equity is very important in carrying out a speed management program. And it's often a very difficult or crucial ingredient in any speed management plan. And lastly, speed has an extra complication in that it's the only highway safety behavior that can sometimes reap a benefit. Efficiencies in commerce and productivity can be realized through faster delivery systems, including those systems that operate on America's surface transportation system. So answering and balancing these questions and issues is complicated. So nationally, we generally use fatal crash data as a barometer or measure of the safety health of the nation's roads. Speeding-related fatalities are consistently measured about 25 to 30% of total crash fatalities annually. So it's important to know demographically who engages in speeding behaviors. So I'm using 2018 data that's the most recent available. It indicates 30% of male drivers and 18% of female drivers in the 15 to 20-year-old age group involved in fatal crashes were speeding. And this is the highest age group among all other age groups. Among speeding drivers involved in fatal crashes, 25% did not have valid driver's licenses at the time of the crash. Drivers who were speeding when involved in fatal crashes were more likely to have been drinking, almost 40%. 31% of motorcycle riders involved in fatal crashes were speeding, more than drivers of any other vehicle type. And in fatal crashes, nearly half, and I think you know that, of speeding drivers were not restrained at the time of the crash. So where do speeding related fatalities occur? So in 2018, when roadway functional class was known, 85% of speeding-related fatalities occur on non-interstate roadways. And I think that's important to note. So young male drivers with high risk tolerance driving on non-interstate roads consistently are the major contributors to speeding-related crashes nationally. I think I missed a slide. Sure what happened here. My computer's locked up. I apologize for that. There we go. I didn't. So this one shows the roadway functional classifications by fatality type, speeding-related fatality. So as to behavioral countermeasures, I think you all are familiar with the high visibility enforcement campaigns, which is designed to create deterrence and can change unlawful traffic driving behaviors. And HVE combines highly visible and proactive law enforcement targeting a specific safety issue. And I think that's important also. The HVE campaign must target a specific issue, in this case, speeding. And its ingredients are strong laws, and every state has speeding laws, public information campaigns, and targeted traffic enforcement of those laws. So NHTSA offers a great deal of communications assets targeted at speeding using two slogans: obey the sign or pay the fine, and stop speeding before it stops you. And we certainly offer TV, radio, banner ads, and other materials on trafficsafetymarketing.gov. They're available for download. And NHTSA also develops and makes available training for law enforcement officers in the use and operation of speed measuring devices, radar and LiDAR units. I'm going to end today with the safe system approach, which includes safe speeds as one of its core elements. And I know you heard in the opening plenary session from Jane Terry, the National Safety Council, a strong proponent of safe systems approach. And so I'm not going to repeat the information about the elements and the principles. I think she's covered them very adequately for you all. But I will reiterate that speed choice is a function of human behavior. People choose how fast they go. And the speed at which they'll travel across roadways, interstate or local connectors, whatever it may be. And HVE can be an effective countermeasure to address the safe speed elements in the safe systems approach. And I think that's important because a lot of the safe speeds element focuses a lot of these on infrastructure. But HVE can be very important in achieving that safe speeds element in the safe systems approach. And I hope you'll take that into consideration as you address speeding related problems in Virginia. And finally, NHTSA is working very closely, as you know, with the National Safety Council, other modal partners at the DOT, and broadly with stakeholders and partners to implement the elements and principles of the safe systems approach. And I hope I've given you a little bit of information from a national perspective, and I know the next speakers will give you more localized individual programs that they've undertaken to address risky driving behaviors. And Bill and the folks at Virginia, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk to you today. And I know there will be questions in the chat pod afterwards. So Bill, I'll turn it back to you. And thank you all very much.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Thanks for that great information, the national perspective on speeding issues that are happening out there. There are a couple of questions in the chat box that we will address at the end of all the presentations. We're keeping track of those. So if you can hang on, because they'll probably be needed to be answered by you as well. Next up, we're going to have Michael Sawyer from the city of Richmond, and he will talk about how risky drivers are all around us, and our road to recovery from traffic-related deaths and serious injuries takes time, resources, and focus. We're going to see how the city of Richmond and their Vision Zero approach are taking steps to eliminate risky driving behavior. Mark, the field is all yours. Mike,
thanks, Bill, and appreciate the time today and the opportunity to share a little bit of what Richmond's doing at a local level. So just in overall, we've got 3 focus areas. Vision Zero means that everyone arrives safely. Complete Streets means that we serve all the different modes. And then Smart Cities is dealing with using technology, not for technology's sake, but to actually accomplish the other 2 goals. Why is Vision Zero important to the Richmond region? Here's a map of the killed and seriously injured crashes. Each dot is a story. it's a family, and you know, what it ends up being is about 20 people per week that didn't make it to their destination safely. They ended up either in the hospital with life-changing injuries or in the morgue. We need to keep our focus at a local level on this issue. And then you can see by this chart here, kind of the past few years in the city of Richmond, the gray is interstate, and we're responsible for the blue. And if we project that out into 2021, you can see where we're probably going to end up at the end of the year of about 180 people affected. We use a people-based approach because it's a health issue. And so I would say our roads are in recovery, and what every recovery program needs is a 12-step program. So we've come up with 12 steps, and I'd like to walk through those with you. And I'd like to really focus on the first 7, which is just the foundation of building an organizational structure to focus on the risky behaviors. I think oftentimes that's overlooked, and I think it's an important component for any locality in Virginia to focus on. So the first thing we did it back in 1966. We established the Safe and Healthy Streets Commission. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. Invite anyone to come. It'll probably be virtual again, but this is codified into our local city code, where it provides advice to our city council, and it's made up of a multidisciplinary team. There's engineers, educators, emergency responders, enforcement, health, and citizens, as well as a council person. And we all get together on a quarterly basis, and we try to make a difference in our approach. So that was step 1, and we've got 50 years, and it's one of the first in the country to be established. Step 2 was our city council adopted a resolution in 2016 saying this is our goal, 0 deaths and serious injuries for motor vehicle crashes by 2030. And we also incorporated language into our master plan, Richmond 300. Step 3 is our Vision Zero pledge. In other localities, pledge may mean something you make with the public, but this was a pledge that we made internally to each other. This was between the internal stakeholders in the city and its nonprofit partners, as well as state and federal partners. And why is pledge important? It shapes culture. And if we look at this traditional hotspot method, if you think of that as a risky behavior, and you're trying to affect, say, speeding, and you just went out with your toolbox by yourself, you wouldn't have all these other things working for you. So this background, these first 7 steps are creating that background of creating the culture. Our policies are our DNA. We have a comprehensive approach where it's multidisciplinary, and we really bring everything we have to bear to Vision Zero at the local level. So then came our public outreach, which was a Safe and Healthy Streets Challenge. It is a challenge, and there's 5 things that everyone can do, and things wouldn't be so bad. And you can remember that by share the road, obey speed limits, buckle in, avoid distractions, and drive sober. If we did those 5 things, we wouldn't be as bad a shape. So that was the public-facing challenge. Then we created an action plan, and it was up to the commission to monitor the plan. And we had over 100 organizations participate, lots of public input, and we did it in a period of about 4 months. So we're real proud of the plan, and we're on year 4 of the plan right now. Part of the plan was to develop a high injury street network. So this is where 62% of our death and serious injuries occur just on 58 miles, or 7% of the network. And then you can also see it's kind of a shaded color there. And that's from an equity lens. We use the Department of Health's Health Opportunity Index, and that helps us focus where there are other issues such as asthma and heart attacks and those types of things where lifespans are shorter. And this was kind of the overlap between our Vision Zero program and our Healthy Streets initiative. As you can see that most of our deaths and serious injuries are occurring in those areas which have very low health opportunities. On the other side of it, we also have about 70% of our network that's close to zero, and it forms the backbone of the Vision Zero Street Network. So, nearly 600 miles now that we've designated as being safe. We also have a dashboard. If anyone's interested, I can get you a link to that as well. One of the things that was missing was we switched our form of government. We used to be city manager under the city council, and we went to a strong mayor form of government. And one of the things that we didn't know that we needed was a Vision Zero task force and coordinator. So I'm the coordinator, and there's a lot of help to take place. There's a picture of all the different department leaders, but we needed organizing framework and the task force to deliver the action plan. So this is the executive branch's version of the legislative branch's commission. So we're hard at work. We just had a meeting in preparation for the upcoming commission meeting. So we kind of drive each other forward on both sides. And we have priorities. This is step 7. So we're in year 4 and we're implementing those. Then we get to the fun stuff, right, where you're trying to shift safety culture and engage community leaders. So what we did was we started with why and worked with our health department because they're really good at getting people to do things and messaging and leveraging their approaches. And we developed leadership talking points. So this month is going to be impaired driving. So, you know, we've encouraged people to find their best sober ride. And this is our mayor, Mayor Stoney, and he's out and installing high visibility crosswalks and really has been a great leader for us when it comes to Vision Zero. So here again, here's our messaging calendar. So we're in impaired, and then next month will be new drivers. And it's just a quick message that we can send to staff and the people that we love to remind them. So shifting the safety culture, right? It's focused on the family, neighborhood, community, places of worship, where we work, the school. And it's about asking interesting questions like, why aren't we a place where people stop for people crossing the street, right? And we can do that through our artwork. And here's several different examples of social media and how people are reacting to the new Stop for Pedestrian law. We took a really strong action on that this past spring and into the summer through multiple means to just try to get people to stop for people crossing the street. It's also about legislation. So we're really going to push for a primary seatbelt law again this year. And you can see some of the other things we're working on there. But it's more than legislation, as Keith said, is complex, right? It's about shared values, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. So we really need to find creative ways to talk about this. So the one method I like to use is the fear of heights. People are afraid of heights, and they tend to act differently when they're up high and there's ability to fall. And relating that back to speed and the whole conundrum that we have with trying to get the message across. So I often ask here, and I can see the chat here. So if you guys want to participate, if you've ever stood on a step ladder, most people raise their hand. Yeah, I've stood on a step ladder. And then I ask, have you maybe climbed up onto the rung that you shouldn't have just to reach something just out of reach? And most people will nod their head. And I said, well, how careful are you when you're up there? And most people will say, I'm pretty careful on that step ladder. And I said, well, this is the question for the chat. How fast are you going when you hit the ground? And you go ahead and put your answer in there in miles per hour. How fast are you heading when you hit the ground? And I'll pause for a second to see if there are any answers that come in. Okay, 35, less than 5. 32 due to gravity. All right, 25. Okay. So when you actually hit, and then I follow up, I'm going to tell you the answer in a second, but then I follow up with, well, how do you feel when you hit the ground? And most people are saying, I feel pretty rotten. I don't feel good at all. And then I say, well, what if you were a 90-year-old and you were on top of that ladder and you fell off? What would happen to you? Then most people say, well, I'd probably break my hip and I would die. And so it just takes a slight change in characteristics of the occupant of the vehicle or the person on the ladder for it to make a big difference in the severity of the crash. So the crash, get my grandchild to go up there. That's good. I like that one. So here's the the graphic. So you're about 10 to 15 miles an hour falling off that ladder, and it could be a 10 to 15 mile an hour speed that could kill a 90-year-old, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the fear of heights, I think, has a strong message that we can give to Virginia as well as the nation about the differences, because how often do we go above 15 miles an hour in a vehicle? Okay. And so we did a little bit of work with the health department, and we came up with the number of unintentional falls in the city, and they're a lot higher than the ones for motor vehicle crashes in an average year. And so you can even see slipping, tripping, and stumbling 199 per year. That's fairly significant. So we can't even walk, let alone get in behind a 2-ton vehicle and pay attention and do all the things that we're supposed to do. So even walking is difficult for us. And you can see it in the hospital emergency department, the top 10 leading causes of death or treatment for non-fatal injuries. The red is unintentional falls and the blue is motor vehicle occupant. But then we say, well, my car, it has 5 stars, right? More stars, safer cars. Well, if we look at what speed things are tested at, they're in this area here of 35 to 40 miles an hour is where the tests are. And then it doubles, our chance of probability of death doubles for every 10 miles an hour we go over that speed. And it's even worse, like I said, with someone that's older. Someone 80 has 4 times with the same impact the likelihood of fatality than a 15-year-old. And we know that as we get a little bit older, we get a little more frail, right? So these things aren't maybe new to us and make sense to us, but it's something that we may not have thought about quite this way. So then I'll ask the question, what do all these have in common? An unbelted daughter in a motor vehicle, a son crossing the street to go to school, a mother riding a motorcycle, dad riding a bike, grandmother jogging, dog running out the front door, deer crossing to the park. The answer to that is they're all vulnerable users. And what I want to make a point about here is we're all vulnerable users, and every one of these 182 people in 2020 in the city of Richmond were affected by speed. There needs to be enough crash energy in that crash for a serious injury or death. If you look at this, over half of these are protected, what we would consider protected. They're wearing their seatbelt, okay? So maybe we should be thinking about speed a little bit differently. When we talk about speed or speeding or speed management, we need to be thinking in terms of who is the vulnerable user. There were a few, record lows for walking and biking last year, which was great. It's not zero yet, we still have work to do, but those numbers were decreasing. The one that really increased was no belt, and we've got to have that primary seatbelt law for all seats, every trip, every time. We've got to have it. And so I just that's my ending part for speed and risky behavior. I just want to let you know that we're also working on a high risk impaired driving action plan using a study by the NHTSA. We're looking forward to that. The first stakeholder meeting will be scheduled a little bit later. So that's a big focus of ours as well. And so we're back to the steps again. So after all that fun and shifting the safety culture, we have this Vision Zero as in safe systems approach as our DNA. And it's in everything that we do. We focus on resources. We write a lot of grants. We look at the budget time. We try to leverage partnerships. And step 12 is we keep our head up because we know the smart cities thing is going to be changing the approach here, coming up with new technology and automated vehicles and that type of thing. So thanks for your time and all the best.
Thank you, Michael, for all the information in the Vision Zero and your efforts locally in the Vision Zero program. We hope to spread that not only statewide, but it's catching on nationwide as well. So looking forward to seeing more of those things and good things happening. It's a good process there with that 12-step effort. I bet that everybody didn't know they were going to have a math exam within your presentation as well. Next, we're going to have Andrea Garland, and she's going to be discussing the process they went through in the city of Roanoke to create the Every Corner is a Crosswalk and the successes and challenges they faced launching a virtual campaign during a pandemic. She will also talk about how they're applying lessons learned into their 2021 speed awareness campaign. Andrea, the presentation is yours.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I want to thank can everybody hear me? Yes.
Yes, we
I want to
can.
thank you. I want to thank the DMV Highway Safety Team for inviting me to participate in this conference. And today I'm going to talk about the City of Roanoke experience and venturing into media campaigns. I have been with the City of Roanoke for 6 years, but it took me about 4 years to figure out how to fund safety campaigns. So actually, I want to thank DMV for having the opportunity available to local governments across the state for funding for these campaigns. So why are media campaigns important and widely popular? You know, it has been said already today, and in the opening session, acting NHTSA Administrator Dr. Stephen Cliff mentioned the 5 E's of traffic safety, equity and inclusion, engagement, enforcement, encouragement, and education. And it is because of those last 2 E's, encouragement and education, that media campaigns are important, and to work in conjunction with all the other E's. The Transportation Division in the City of Roanoke wants to use media campaigns as a tool to increase pedestrian safety. Our overall goal is to increase awareness of pedestrians, pedestrian fatalities, pedestrian safety laws, and I should say pedestrian facilities, pedestrian safety laws, and improve behavior of drivers and pedestrians alike. So before I tell you more about our current and last campaigns, I wanted to share some insights into a literature review we conducted to understand the theories behind behavior change to inform the planning, design, and execution of pedestrian safety campaigns for the City of Roanoke. Our findings tells us that that there is good evidence that traffic safety campaigns work when done well. But the main key, or what it is important, is to understand how people change behavior and how decisions are made and when that decision happens. So the most widely used and accepted behavior change theory is the theory of planned behavior. According to this theory, behavior is caused by our behavioral intention, which is influenced by 3 variables: our attitudes, our beliefs around norms, and our perceived behavioral control. So since we're talking about speeding, in that example, the behavior is the intention to not follow the speed limit. The attitude, for example, can be expressed on how we feel about speeding and whether or not it has consequences. So for example, and it has been said today already, many drivers, particularly young ones, believe that speeding is a norm and that has no negative social repercussions. Our beliefs around the subject nerves are whether we believe that other people will approve our behavior, or how motivated are we to earn their approval. And our perceived behavior control is, am I able to stop speeding? Is that something I can do? So, and based on our research, again, we found that media campaigns actually do a better job at sharing information and changing attitudes rather than changing behavior. So it's that attitude piece. And that is where the other E's have to come into place to really influence the whole behavior as a whole. So we identified kind of 3 best practices of how to execute media campaigns. First is evaluation. Typically, this includes one of the following: either self-reported measures such as surveys, observed behavior, and crash statistics. Although there are some sources that recommend against using crash statistics as data for evaluation just because they are so variable. And that is something we actually have gone through for the city of Roanoke specifically. So our campaign targets, so identify your targets before jumping into the design of your campaign. You need to know whose behavior you want to change and what exactly you want people to do or stop doing. And select a specific demographic target based on analyzing data from quantitative methods or from an evaluation study. And pick one behavioral target theme, select a message that is clear and measurable, and a measurable call to action. And then you start developing your campaign. Campaigns don't need to be long. Roanoke has actually chosen to use an 8-week duration campaigns for the past 2 years. It is ideal to coordinate these campaigns with enforcement, policy changes, infrastructure projects, and education to lead to better results. And that is something we're actually doing in the city of Roanoke and very excited about it. Select delivery methods that are co-located. I found this really important. Co-located with where the road users are doing the behavior in question. So for example, we use commuter radio ads to target like the driver when it's actually at the wheel. Then don't overemphasize mass media. It's not just about mass media, although mass media offers a broader reach and may support a long-term cultural shift. We found that campaigns should be used in coordination with multiple media channels directed to target audiences and augmented with community outreach channels. So for instance, I designed these campaigns in the back designing the campaigns, but I'm never the target audience. So in last year campaign, when people tell me, oh, we saw your ad, I will say my running joke was, well, you must be a male between 24 and 60 years old because that is who our target audience is. Let's dive into our 2020 campaign. Our 2020 campaign was our first campaign for the city of Roanoke, our first safety media campaign. Every corner is a crosswalk was designed with the goal of reducing the number of crashes between vehicles and people walking. We started planning this campaign in 2019, and in 2020, the General Assembly voted to change the Virginia state law to say that drivers must stop for pedestrians at all crosswalks as opposed to yield. And that was a huge win for pedestrian advocates across the state. So we wanted to add this into our campaign goals and messaging, again, in an effort to coordinate policy changes into the campaign. Our targets, behavior was the lack of compliance from both drivers and pedestrians, the lack of crosswalk compliance for both drivers and pedestrians. So, and this was based on crash report data that we analyzed and told us that most pedestrian-related crashes were occurring at unsignalized crosswalks or near intersections at mid-block locations. So if I had a magic wand, the effort will be to put all those mid-block walkers onto the crosswalk and then get all drivers to stop for them, and then automatically will reduce our pedestrian vehicle crashes by 67%. And we pick our geography also based on crash analysis. Downtown Roanoke has the most daily pedestrian and vehicle interactions in the city. And our northwest neighborhoods of the city show that they had a more high-risk areas for pedestrian crashes. And our audience, again, was based on crash data analysis, which yielded to be men between 22 and 65 years old, 64 years old. The message in Virginia, every corner is a crosswalk, again, making a straight emphasis into the law with 2 direct calls to action. Pedestrians cross at the corners and drivers stop at the corner. The campaign lasted 8 weeks with an overall media investment of $100,000 and with additional $70,000 in earned media, and donated services to the campaign. It was a virtual campaign, of course. We had to pivot due to COVID, but we accomplished a lot of outreach via communication partners across the city who share our message and distribute our materials at ground level at all their institutions. We had a virtual Facebook live kickoff event with about 90 participants. Our community engagement included yard signs, digital surveys, community videos, an art contest, a story video shared from 2 victims of pedestrian-related crashes. And we wanted our materials to represent a personal touch and familiar scenes for Roanoke, but we designed them in a way that still can be shareable and like an evergreen kind of material that can be shared with other localities, or we can use any other time of the years. We had 2 campaign videos that I'm going to share with you right now.
In Virginia, every corner is a crosswalk, whether a crosswalk is painted or not. Join us in making Roanoke a safe place for everyone. Drivers, stop at the corner. It's the law. Pedestrians cross at the corner. In Virginia, in Roanoke, too many pedestrians are involved in crashes and close calls with cars. The City of Roanoke wants to remind you that by following Virginia laws, you can do your part to prevent injuries. Drivers, stop at the corner. It's the law. Pedestrians cross at the corner. In Roanoke.
So we created those 2 videos for the campaign because we wanted to emphasize that the message, every corner is a crosswalk, whether it was painted or not. So each video features an intersection with a painted crosswalk and one without it. And those 2 locations were through the inspiration for our graphics on our design. Our campaign used, again, a combination of outdoor, print, and digital material combined with local partners to distribute materials at ground level. Our paid media included radio, bus ads, mobile display ads, connected TV, and gas station ads. Our donated media included spots on local TV channels, online and print newspaper articles. Our outreach included community videos created by partners and shared on social media. We produced 2 victim videos that had been widely shared as well. And finally, we created an art contest to have an everlasting effect for the campaign. Color Your Corner is the name of the art contest, and it celebrated 5 artists by displaying their art pieces of signal boxes. The art was placed at 5 locations on one of each quadrant of the city. So here we have Bear Crossing, Stop in the Name of Love, Every Corner is a Crosswalk, Crosswalk Diversity, and Downtown Streets. And they look fabulous, and we just now want to do just more of these. It's the first time we do anything like this, at least for the transportation division, embarking on the art realm. So now this year campaign, again, so we understand the need to talk about speeding. Our campaign this year, No Need to Speed, launched in June. Our goal is to increase awareness of speeding as pedestrian safety issue and reduce speed-related crashes. Our targets, again, the behavior is driving above the speed limit on city streets. The geography, we actually drove into a comprehensive GIS network analysis, kind of a high injury network analysis to identify 10 priority corridors across the city to focus our outreach efforts. One of these corridors this year is actually being paved, and we are doing a very ambitious road diet that is on the way right now. So we're really excited to coordinate again the campaign efforts with engineering and encouragement. This corridor, also Brandon Avenue, is the location where occurred a pedestrian fatality last year, and the grandparents of the victim participated in the storytelling video series that we produce. So we love how we can really tie in all our efforts through the campaign. The audience, again, is men, this time men under 25. So again, I'm not seeing any of my ads. The message is no need to speed with two direct calls to action. It is up to you to keep our streets safe, placed on media where the driver can actually make a decision about their behavior. So on radio, on bus ads, and together we can make the streets a safer place, placed in media where all audiences can reflect on their behavior. The campaign will last 8 weeks. We kick off the campaign with a community walk on one of our top 10 pedestrian safety corridors. We have a goal to invest about $100,000 in media placement, working again with the local partners to share the message. This year, we're adding local influencers to the mix of partners, trying to get those young people to tweet us on Facebook. Our community engagement strategies include taking a pledge and a neighborhood ambassador program, community videos, and a second-year contest. So here's our video for this year's campaign.
Speeding causes crashes, risking injury or death to our neighbors who travel on foot. Slower driving keeps all of us safer.
I slow down because children should feel safe around their schools and in their neighborhood.
I slow down when it's dark, rainy, or hard to see.
I slow down to keep the people I care about safe. Together, we can make our streets a safer place.
Speeding
I'm almost finishing up here, but actually, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but as an exercise, I wanted to encourage everybody here to actually take our pledge to drive safely. So I'm going to type it here in the chat. And what I'm finishing up, it really takes 2 seconds. Would you all take the pledge to be a safer driver? So what I'm doing that, want to give a shout out to our team. We do work with a consultant, ultrasound consultant, and we work very closely with the Roanoke Valley and Allegheny Regional Commission, as well as Right Solutions and Roanoke Valley Television on producing all our digital materials. I already saw a question in the chat about how is this getting funded. So we use the Highway Safety Grant, which is administered by DMV and is NHTSA funded. And I want to really encourage, lift this up here because it really is a great way to dive into this venture. Who is eligible? Like all local governments, law enforcement agencies, state agencies, institutions, and private nonprofits. Applications are usually due in February. The funding is from October to September of the following year. I applied under the media and education subject. There's a 25% match for the money, but again, we earn every single dollar of that and above through earned media and one-to-one match donations and other donations and staff time. So that's another thing I will leave here in the chat for you. The link to the Highway Safety Grant page. And that is all I have for you today. And thank you so much. And that is our website where we have all our information about our grants, our campaigns.
All righty, thank you so much, Andrea. That was great information, and it's a very simple message to keep in mind is every corner is a crosswalk. Nice and easy to remember, and I like how you're applying that concept along with the speed camp. So how that transpires over this coming year. All right, and you answered the question that was in the chat about the art project funded. We can come back to that one with a promotion as well. Next up, we're going to have Patrick Hoye from Iowa, and he's going to tell us about a very successful campaign that he's been running. It's called the High Five Project, and it's focused in the rural areas in reducing fatalities, serious injuries, and increasing seatbelt use and improving rural roadways. Using all the E's of traffic safety, bringing together those who can make a difference and implementing those improvements in the High Five areas. We'll also talk about their I-80 challenge project that they're conducting. Patrick, all yours.
Thank you. First of all, it's great to join you from the state of Iowa, and it's always interesting to hear the take from other states and what they're doing to tackle serious injury and fatalities in their state. In the state of Iowa, the High Five program actually came about as we were looking at what we could do to drive down fatalities in our state. I think like every state, we wanted to raise our seatbelt compliance rate and reduce serious injuries and crashes. So the first thing that we did is we did a deep dive into the data of what was causing fatality crashes and serious injury crashes here in the state of Iowa. And Iowa's a rural state. And one of the things that we were noticing that about 72% of all fatalities in the state of Iowa were actually considered rural. And we began to take a look at some of the things that were occurring in the crashes that maybe through a program through the safety office that we could begin to change some of the results of these crashes. And the bottom statistics that you see there, even though Iowa was a little above average in seatbelt compliance rate at 91%, 43 of all of our passenger vehicle fatalities were unbuckled. So if you ever had to ask yourself, do seatbelts really make a difference? It certainly did in our state, and I think it does nationally, that in a state that has 91% seatbelt compliance, yet 43% of fatalities were unbuckled. So we began to take a look at. Yes.
Could you put some presentation mode in? We're seeing the side slides and it's kind of small.
Oh, sorry.
Go to your presentation mode and make it a little bit bigger.
Let's see.
Go down to the bottom line. There's look like a little screen. On the bottom line of your PowerPoint.
Right here.
A little bit farther over. Next one. That should be it.
Sorry.
Still didn't change.
Let's see.
Try the view tab at the top. Keep it the same. Maybe fit the window. Time maximize.
Yeah.
Under the view.
Can you maximize your screen, Patrick?
I can.
That might make it bigger. Because we're seeing your desktop as well.
Oh. I apologize for that. Well, I tell you, do you have my PowerPoint up? Can you pull it up? Go from there.
By saying click the square in the top right corner.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that.
Somebody saying slideshow from the beginning. Maybe that should pop it up.
There we go. There we go.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So we began to take a look at a program that we could put together, and obviously the three most important components that we believed had to be part of this was to raise seatbelt compliance. We were going to need assistance from law enforcement, from our engineering partners, and to develop an educational campaign. And I don't think this probably will come as a surprise to anyone, but when we looked at the crash data in the state of Iowa where rural fatalities were happening, we found that the counties that had higher than normal crash rates also had lower than normal seatbelt compliance rates. So was something that we knew we were going to have to change a culture with our citizens in our rural area, and that's really the beginning of how the High Five began. So. Casey, next one. For the planning and implementation of the High Five, we decided that we would do a pilot program. So we reached out to 5 counties in Iowa, and we sat down with the Sheriff's Department, the local State Patrol district commanders, and the state DOT engineers, and all of us got together and began to take a look at what we could do in those counties to address low seatbelt compliance rate. Like I talked about on the emphasis of the rural areas, it was going to be counties that had low seatbelt compliance rates, they had high crash frequency, and that we could find law enforcement agencies that were going to be willing to work together. And then at the last component, that state and county engineers would come together and take a look at crash sites as a whole to see if there were engineering design flaws that might make a difference in county crashes. Sorry, next one. The first stage was the public information and education component that we wanted to do with the High Five. If you see on the High Five cards there, we created these and began to do an educational piece. When law enforcement officers were stopping cars, they were telling them they were there because this was part of the High Five program. They were trying to address counties that were having high crashes, and that's why they were seeing a large increase in law enforcement officers in their counties. We also began to leave them at like local convenience stores where in rural Iowa, probably just like Virginia, the locals are stopping at the coffee shops early in the morning. And we left these cards as a reminder and began to tell convenience staff that their county had been selected because of high crash rates, and that the High Five program was going to try to change the high crash rate and low seatbelt compliance. And so the informational piece began to be a key component. A lot of these small towns had local newspapers. We began writing letters to the editor in all of the local papers, advising them why High Five was in their county and the importance of wearing seatbelts. And for our state patrol, they have public resource officers. That was one of the things that we asked them to do as they joined the High Five program, was to reach out to the local schools, radios, and they began doing a High Five CAN program, talking about the need to not only buckle up, but the other things that cause crashes, such as slowing down and things like that. Next one. Obviously, we had measurable outcomes and goals. When we started the High Five, we were wanting to see basically, one, could we increase our seatbelt compliance rates? And obviously that was part of the law enforcement component. We were going to take a look at the number of citations issued before the High Five and then upon the completion of the High Five to see if a large high visibility enforcement could change driver behaviors in these counties. The media contacts, one of the things that we did when we gave contracts to the counties and the state patrol in these High Five areas was we mandated that they do 3 media contacts every month. They were required to do monthly activity reports where they reported anything that they were doing in the line of High Five. And then halfway through the year that the contract the county had, we did go in and do road safety audits. This was county engineer, state DOT engineer, and they began to take a look at low-cost engineering efforts that could be done to change high-risk intersections or roadways. And then the last one, of course, and probably the most important, is if the High Five was going to be successful, could it actually reduce serious injury crashes and fatalities? So our first 5 counties were Alameda, Fremont, Marion, and Palo Alto and Webster County. We started this program in April of 2014. And as you can see, Alameda was our lowest county in the state. When we did the seatbelt surveys to determine what counties we'd be going to, Alameda came in at 61%. At the end of the High Five program, their numbers had actually risen to 87%. So of the original 5 counties, you can see for the most part, there were pretty significant jumps in the seatbelt compliance rate. And we contribute that to the large step up of enforcement efforts, the media campaign, and the overall knowledge of the High Five in their community. Next. We talked about the enforcement portion of that. Alan McKee, you saw, had the significant jump. One of the things that was a little surprising when we looked at a year long, so in 2013 in Alan McKee County, between all the cities, the counties, and the state patrol, only 42 seatbelt citations had been issued. And like I said earlier, it was pretty obvious that in counties where there was very little enforcement, unfortunately, the compliance rates were pretty low. So as you can see, when the High Five came in, we had significant jumps in the number of seatbelt citations that were issued by law enforcement. You know, one of the things that we've been asked is, Iowa is a primary seatbelt law. Can it be done in a state that does not have a primary? And the answer is absolutely yes. You know, we've talked to our law enforcement partners across the country, and it certainly can be. Is it more difficult? It is, but it certainly can be done. Our next. Seatbelt convictions for year 2 and 3. Every year we move to 5 new counties, and you can see in year 2 and year 3, once again, seatbelt convictions, the number of citations that were issued from the counties dramatically increased, and in all of our counties we saw an increase in the seatbelt compliance rate as well. And one of the, like I said earlier, probably one of the most important overall aspects of this was by doing the stepped up campaigns of enforcement and education, would we be able to change serious injury or fatality crashes? And in the High Fives, even though the state of Iowa actually saw a slight increase in crashes throughout the year, in the High Fives, they went down just about 7%. The 18th month program that the High Five originally started, I mentioned the engineering component, and it is one of those that we saw some significant changes as we began to do the road safety audits of roads that were in need of chevrons, or in one case, the bottom slide there is there was a major shoulder program that needed to be done that was completed by the state DOT and the local county engineer. And so we were able to do at least one low-cost engineering improvement in every county that we did it. Obviously, the state office did not have those funds that came through the Department of Transportation. They were not NHTSA funds that did the engineering, but every county saw some type of an engineering change. Over the last 4 years, that's a snapshot. Iowa has 99 counties. That gives you kind of the broad scope of the overall statewide approach that we had. The yellow were the very first 5 counties that we did. The orange were have been the very last 5. You know, one of the things that we were happy to see is every year that the High Five was going, Iowa's seatbelt compliance rate overall through our state seatbelt survey continued to climb. So we saw that as a positive one when we were going back and retesting these counties. Their seatbelt compliance were all higher than when they originally started in the High Five program. One of the things that was probably one of the most successful parts of the High Five was that the media began to pick up on the High Five program statewide. And if you Google rural High Five safety program, you'll see a whole slew of different news articles, and they were all very positive about the High Five program. And they were taking a look at the number of crashes that had been reduced and what had previously been all high crash counties in the state of Iowa. So, you know, I guess the overall good news is the media began to work with us, supporting the high five and supporting seatbelt use. This last year, when we started the high five program in 2013, I mentioned Iowa's seatbelt compliance rate was at 91%. This last year in 2020, we were at an all-time high of 95.2. And we believe that the high five has been that driving force that has driven up our seatbelt compliance rate in our state and driven down the unrestrained fatalities in our state. Next. So with that, like I said, the true essence of the high five, and it can work for a city, county, or state, but it was bringing law enforcement partners together. We worked with sheriff's departments and the state patrol. They did coordinated enforcement projects. The engineers working together to take a look at high crash sites to see if there was any engineering changes that would help to reduce those crashes. And then a very strong educational component that really reached the essence of what the high five program was trying to do. And I think overall, when we went back, even 4 years later to the original ones, the overall theme was that even the law enforcement agencies that hadn't been writing citations before the high five continue to do so even after we left with the funding. And then obviously once engineering programs are put in place, and it's a solid fix for a long time. But overall, we were extremely thrilled with the success of the high five. We've actually, because now our seatbelt compliance, it's getting harder to find counties with low. We've actually shifted to the high five in alcohol impaired. So we're looking at counties that have higher than normal crash rates and that are alcohol related. And so we're venturing into that realm now with the high five. But no matter where you are, I think the components are there that can certainly drive it. And we all know if we can get people to buckle up, they will survive the crashes. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and all good information. And like I said, that 95.2 is a great rate to have. I can see your point about trying to find places to go next, and I'm glad to see your shifting focus and hitting the impaired driving as well, because no matter what the issue is in the risky driving realm, you can always address it by various ways, and this seems to be the perfect way to do that as well. This is great. Okay, we are now at the time for Q&A. There were a couple up farther. The first two will be for Keith. There was a question of any thoughts regarding why Europe's crash rates decreased during 2020 while the U.S. rates increased, fatality rates.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, we did not look at any international data. It's a good question, and we would like to look at that, but you know, we did these studies while the pandemic was ongoing, so it was hard to get data for the United States. Might be hard over in Europe, but we should look at some international examples and see what was going on with the traffic situation there. Thanks for the question.
Okay. There's also another one, kind of a law enforcement related question is, what do you think the impact is to highway safety in reference to law enforcement agencies often being not fully staffed?
Well, we know that's an issue. I mean, the answer is fairly intuitive within the question that when you don't have staff, you can't do as much. So, you know, you can't, although people try to do more with less, it's often difficult to do more with less. So, you know, law enforcement agencies, I think, are doing the best they can. We have a lot of great partners out there, but often traffic enforcement initiatives do suffer when staffing goes down. Certainly recruitment and retention is probably one of, if not the most crucial issue to law enforcement today, given current environment and situations. So we try to help law enforcement as much as we can. We're working very, very closely with DOJ, both the Bureau of Justice Assistance and the COPS office, discussing recruitment and retention and how to assist law enforcement in these difficult times.
Yes, they are facing some difficult times with personnel. Thanks, Keith. The next question is for Andrea. I know she addressed part of this about how the ARC project was funded But there's a second part to that is how it's promoted. What did you do? What efforts did you do to get that out to have people participate?
Yeah, no, actually, I answered that wrong because I just was kind of glancing over when I saw the question. But the art project was actually funded by our department. So we work with the Arts Commission. Roanoke has a Arts Commission, and to promote to do a call for artists, and the whole effort was funded directly by our department. But I mean, full disclosure, I mean, we spent $5,000, and that included paying the artist for the art. So it's not a huge undertaking. So, and you know, we promoted it on social media and various places where we knew artists will be watching. And yeah, work closely with the Arts Commission, and with the Arts Commission, we selected the winners and worked with the whole team.
Okay, thanks. And seems like you get a lot of people involved in these projects. And the more people you get involved, and the more disciplines that you get involved, the more things are happening. It's great to see. Thank you. I know Patrick answered the one about the jurisdictions continuing with the high five programming. He answered that right along with his presentation. There was a note in the chat that apparently Europe was on lockdown, so that may have had an impact on their fatality rates as well. So they may have been dealing with that pandemic a little bit differently than the way the U.S. was dealing with it, and maybe it started earlier. So I know she might be looking into that for you. I don't see any other questions that need to be addressed in the chat. If anybody has any more that they might want to put in, we have a couple of minutes left while our speakers are available. Kirk reposted your question. I believe Keith was trying to answer that as far as recruitment in law enforcement is trying to focus on that as well. There's a lot of things law enforcement is facing. I don't know if you want to ask a different form of that question about what impact on highway safety. You can see that each one of these presentations kind of looked at some different aspects of risky driving, not only with speeding, and speed management, also local projects such as the City of Richmond and the City of Roanoke, where they're addressing these different things with Vision Zero and pedestrian issues, and now transferring over into your speed campaign, as well as rural road issues, where we're seeing a lot of speeding going on and a lot of low belt use. So they're addressing it various ways, coming at it with different approaches, using a variety of agencies and people to help them out. Nobody can do it alone, obviously, so we're trying to get as many people involved as we can to try to address this risky driving issue. And the more people you get involved, you can see the more resources that become available to you to address the issues that you have in your areas. Give it a couple more minutes for anybody to put any more questions in the chat for our presenters. Again, all the presentations will be available at the end of the conference. And, you will be receiving a survey link to evaluate and kind of give our comments and feedback on the summit, so that we can apply those to the next summit, which is actually be in person in Alexandria, Virginia, May 3rd and 5th of 2022. So mark your calendars now. We hope to see you all there. And don't forget to attend the remainder of the sessions that are available coming up next week. Several sessions coming up. Okay, the question was posted is, how much of a barrier is it to fully implement highway safety or enforcement programs and or operations with skeletal law enforcement agencies? So it's trying to get those smaller agencies or ones that are really struggling with personnel, how to get them involved in highway safety programs and efforts. I guess that could be actually given out to each one of you because you all work with law enforcement in your various projects.
I know that is an issue that we're seeing in our state as well, and the answer that we have found is the multi-jurisdictional projects. That if we can get the state patrol or the sheriff's departments to work with our smaller agencies, the 1 or 2 person departments, things like that, we're finding that the collaboration is stronger. And you know, when you're talking of staffing shortings as well, that you can have a pretty robust project if you're using different and multiple agencies working together. And so for us, that has seemed to be a good trend for us in Iowa.
I would say the same in the city of Richmond, leveraging resources. I often say we're not running a wellness clinic here. We're running triage, and you know, when you have a set of resources, you're going to dedicate those to the high injury network, and some of the other things are going to go by the wayside. We can't be on Mrs. Smith's street with 300 cars a day. Where there's really not a speeding issue. We have to be on the high injury network where there's 25,000 vehicles a day, and offering a better presence there.
Like you're all said, you know, get as many people as you can involved to help you out with your projects and your efforts in highway safety. There was another question put in the chat. So since these were city transportation departments, are any new standards or guidelines to make communities safer? For instance, sidewalks, street lights, keeping lines of sight open. Are there, I guess, efforts in those areas?
So I can go with that one as well. We have a Better Streets Manual, which is our complete streets policy, and that's how we serve all different modes. We also follow national guidance such as the Highway Safety Manual and other guidance there that are produced at the federal level. But yeah, we're well suited to try to serve all users. Just takes funding.
Here at the city of Roanoke, we also have a complete streets policy, and we do implement primarily a lot of our road safety projects, along with transportation being a maintenance department. We implement a lot of our road safety projects through our paving program, our annual paving program. So annually, every time we pave a road, we look at how can we improve the user perspective. So again, this year we have a 5-lane road that we're transforming into a 2-lane road with a center median and buffer bike lanes. We're adding additional crosswalks and signalization for pedestrians. So it's a very ambitious and just really a great example of collaborating and using our resources to improve the safer of all users. But yeah, that's kind of how we operate. And then on all our capital improvement projects, that has been definitely a priority. I'll say in the last few years, where we all look at the vulnerable users first.
Okay, very good. There was one more question put in here is what are the potential funding sources for Vision Zero? I guess that would go to Michael, and kind of had convenience. He's got the Vision Zero, but there's a lot of cities that are coming on board with that Vision Zero campaigns and strategies.
Sure. So I would just lead by saying that every source is a resource for potential funding, whether it's a private developer, a university, traditional transportation sources. There's always the ability to review a plan and be able to implement. As far as enforcement goes, we're looking at introducing an ordinance related to photo speed enforcement, a new law in Virginia. And what we hope to do with that is establish a special fund for Vision Zero action plan items, so that the revenue sustains that program first. And then if there's anything extra, we're able to implement the action plan items that maybe are more education and enforcement related.
Okay, great. Yeah, you always look for funding. like I said, it takes funding to get things done, and various streams of funds can do different things. Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Keith Williams from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and Enforcement Justice Services, Mr. Michael Sawyer from the City of Richmond, Ms. Andrea Garland from the City of Roanoke, and Patrick Hoye from the State of Iowa. These were all great sessions, great presentations, and we'd like to offer you the information when it comes out. You take that and run with it as best you can. Thank you. This ends the session, and have a great day. Thanks all.
Thank you.